We have to be careful. Okay, good evening. This is this year we are starting with Maidul. Literally any introduction here is center is in Bengal, but it's just a formal way of doing. He's a political scientist, assistant professor of political science at the center. He has written extensively, he has 3 books already. His first book published in 2015 titled Units of Islamism, published by CUP, and then Indian Muslims after Minimization by OAP in 2019, and his third book, Political Theory and Solutions on the Narratives, published by Maidul Masters. His research interests are in the fields of political theory, contemporary South Asian politics, and cinema studies. Besides being a scholar in political science discipline, he is also a public intellectual who appears on Bangla television channels and All India radio quite often, and he is also an expert on Indian politics. Vivid contributor in English and Bangla print and digital media. I mean, I don't know why Maidul actually use these two terms, occasionally contributing, occasionally always. It's not cool. He's so humble. Anyway, so if you want to know more about Maidul and his work, I mean, you can go to his personal website. So, over to you, as usual, 45 minutes or usually it's shorter than me. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Siddhi, for my introduction. I will just make it very correct that I occasionally appear, not regularly, not every week, like every day on the speaker. So this is a work in progress, and I will be grateful for colleagues and the entire audience here to create more incisive comments and suggestions to improve the work. So the title of the presentation is Political Scientists at Calcutta in the Middle Decades of 20th Century. In November 2009, I was having dinner at Bar 1, a restaurant on Oxford's High Street. At that time, I was a doctoral student in the Department of Politics and International Relations at Oxford University. The occasion of the dinner was to welcome Indira Gopal Nehal, political scientist from the Jawaharlal Nehru University, who was delivering the Radhakrishnan Memorial Lectures hosted by Oxford College. Gandhi Bajpayee, an international relations expert, accompanied her. Bajpayee was a university lecturer at Oxford at that time. Gandhi Gupta, a labor historian based at St. Catherine's College, and I gave company to Nehal and Bajpayee. During the dinner conversation, one major question was discussed. What will happen to Indian political science? The question was asked about the future of political science in India. We asked the question in the context of great advancement in the disciplines of economics, history, law, literature, medicine, physics, sociology, and statistics, where Indians have done remarkably well at the global level. In contrast, political scientists from India did not shine much. At least that was the lament at the dinner table. Little did I know then that from early 2019, I shall grapple with another profound research question: whatever happened to Indian political science? This time, my research question is to look at the past of political science in India, which is far from the futuristic question at the dinner table. In 2009, Dayal delivered lectures on the concept, contestations, and the history of citizenship in India that eventually got published as a monograph. In 2019, I began research in the context of a contested zone of debates on citizenship in the middle of the Afro-Asian massacre, followed by anti-CA movements. In 2009, I believe that disciplines are meant to discipline the disciple. Give us an understanding from the pedagogic point of view. But while researching the evolution of the discipline of political science in the 20th century, I found new disciplines not only from the pedagogical practices, but also from the scholarly output of professional academics who are trained in the discipline or who have previously contributed to the various fields of the discipline. In the Western world, the most deliberate and reflective studies of political life were made in Greece at the end of the 5th century BC, and in the succeeding century in the form of the histories of Herodotus and Thucydides and some pamphlets of Xenophon. Later, Aristotle's normative and empirical studies were among the direct ancestors of contemporary political science. This rich historical context is equally significant in the intellectual history of China, India, and the Afro-Asian world. An understanding of such a long theory of the evolution of the discipline of political science is beyond the scope of my research. By giving such an initial caveat, let me talk straight. This paper is a product of my ongoing research on decolonization and discipline, professional career of Indian political science, a part of the institutional project of decolonization, the disciplines, and the university, sponsored by the Andrew Foundation. The title Decolonization Discipline, Professional Career of Indian Political Science is tentative for the larger monographs that will eventually emerge from this study. However, this paper is primarily based on the research output of political scientists from the 1940s to the 1970s, a period of great importance for academic scholarship in political science. The middle decades of the 20th century, roughly from the 1940s to 70s, were a crucial period in the disciplinary history of political science. The decades saw the rise of empirical political science and later a turn from behavioral political science to the post-behavioural trend in the global scene of academic scholarship, the emergence of a new nation state in South Asia, and the disruption of electoral democracy to the implementation of emergence in India. At the level of international politics, several international relations theorists were interested in looking at international law and the balance of power relations at the height of Cold War. In this context, what were the research concerns of political scientists at Calcutta? Were satisfied with the existing and dominant methodological perspective in the discipline? In this respect, this paper will assess the works and career of political scientists in Calcutta from the 1940s to the 1970s. 25 universities in India were established between January 1857 and August 1949, excluding those in West and East Pakistan since August 1947. All university departments of political science started to bloom in the 1920s, beginning with Lucknow University. In my broad study for the monograph, that will primarily focus on the period of decolonization from the 1920s to the 1970s, I can mainly consider the scholarly outputs of faculty members of 6 university departments. Lucknow founded in 1921, Allahabad established in 1927 from the northern zone, Calcutta 1948 from the east, Pune 1949 from the west, and Madras 1937 and Australia 1948 in the southern zone. So we have a regional kind of balance. Besides the university departments, I should consider 3 premier research institutes of social sciences and 2 relatively new departments established after 1950, in which political scientists have worked and have made distinguished contributions to academic scholarship of medicine. Those 3 research institutes are the CSSSC in Delhi, founded in 1963, Institute for Social and Economic Change in Maidul in 1971, and Center for Study in Social Science, Calcutta in 1973. The other 2 departments considered for the planned monograph the Delhi University Department, established in 1952, and the Center for Political Studies in JNU, founded in 1961. In identifying the significant contributions of the Catholic political scientists during the 1940s to 70s, 2 institutions are primarily examined in this paper. One is the Department of Political Science at the University of Calcutta, and the other is the Research Institute, the CSSSC. A selection from one university department and one research institute based in the city is probably a more representative sample of the scholarly output of political science in Calcutta during the period mentioned above. The Department of International Relations at Calcutta is excluded from the study because from the very beginning, it was founded as a Department of International Relations in 1956 instead of Political Science Department. At the same time, the Department of Political Science at Rabindranath University is not considered because in the context of the period mentioned above, it was a relatively younger department established only in 1971 compared to Calcutta. And the University of Rabindranath was established in 1962, but the department was established. This does not mean there will be no acknowledgement of political science and other and political economy. Of course, in the more extensive study, a few productive political scientists from Calcutta and Rabindranath will be appear while having professional careers of the Calcutta. Now, on to the main subsections of the paper. The first subsection is called the dominance of normative and legal historical political studies, 1940s to 1960s. The Department of Political Science at Calcutta was established in 1948 by Electoral Banerjee or D.N. Banerjee. Although the University of Calcutta, established in January 1857, was colonial, being the first presidency university in British India, the Department of Political Science only came into existence 90 years after the formal establishment of the university and after India became independent from the colonial. Before setting up the department, there was a provision to join the study political economy and political philosophy at the master's level at Presidency College. In 1947, a decision was made to divide political economy and political philosophy into 2 subjects, economics and political science, with the MA examination. On 17 February 1948, then Vice Chancellor of Calcutta University, Professor Banerjee, gave his seal of consent to the proceedings of the selection committee for the appointment of the University Professor of Political Science, which recommended Jawaharlal Banerjee for the position. Now, you can see the picture of Jawaharlal Banerjee is here. For me. This person, your radical point here, the commutable just in terms of the wishes on the selection committee that appointed Banerjee as the first university professor of political science at Calcutta was on the selection committee. The chair professorship was named after the ICS educationist statesman and great mentor, Mr. Surendranath Banerjee. The selection committee recommended that Mr. T. Banerjee be the head of the Department of Political Science at the university for 1 year, effective from May 1, 1948. Now, during the time of the This is a list of all the university teachers in Calcutta, including the salary and the year of appointment, and also some of the some of the faculty who are associated with the colleges. So there were 20 faculty members in 1950, including someone Dr. J.K. Banerjee was a dean from Paris. This was temporary in place of Dr. A.C. Lal was on leave without pay. Dr. A.C. Lal was doing some other studies, but also this kind of clearly saying here, yes, I think let's be. So, find that. And this is coming from the university annual report, 1950. Justice Chancellor Bishop and Dr. Rotana Banerjee's role was crucial in selecting and appointing the manager. By that time, Justice Vishwas was a celebrity after his famous judgment in the Mehta case. Later, Vishwas became the Union Minister in charge of the minorities in the interim government of Governor Name. Dr. Rotana Banerjee, in the meeting of the Senate on 28 February 1948, gave a briefing on Mr. Devendra Banerjee in front of Justice Vishwas and his namesake vice chancellors. There were two Rotana Banerjee. Namesake vice chancellor Rotana Banerjee. So one JEA and one JEA. In the following words, and Rotana Banerjee says in front of the selection committee about Devendra Banerjee, and I quote, Mr. Banerjee is an old pupil of mine, and I would have known him very intimately for the past 30 years. He has been a teacher of the Dhaka University for the last 28 years, and during his period, he made a unique service to that university. He is also a well-known research scholar. He wrote 5 books and not less than 60 articles. His genuinity is so great that he did not submit the excellent books which he wrote for doctor's degree. I have no doubt that if he would have submitted either of the 2 great books, Administrative System and Revenue System of the East India Company, he would have immediately got a doctor's degree. But he is a man of humble nature. He worked as a research scholar in the library of Calcutta University, in the Bengal Records Department, and the Records Department of the Government of India. He presided over the Political Science Conference last year, and the address which he delivered on that occasion was very edifying. I have no doubt that he will fill this chair with great dignity. At the time of the selection, D.N. Banerjee was the head of the Department of Political Science at Dhaka University and the provost of Calcutta. And he founded the Department of Political Science at Dhaka in 1928 and served as its chairman until 1947. He was a member of the Executive Council of Dhaka University, an associate and corresponding member of the Indian Historical Records Commission, and an honorary editor of the 5-year publication program of the Imperial Record Department in New Delhi. Before becoming the head of the Political Science Department at Dhaka, Banerjee was a former professor of economics at Dhaka College and then a reader and an active head of the Department of Economics and Politics at Dhaka. In 1938, when Banerjee became the founding head of the Political Science Department of Dhaka, the professional body of Indian political scientists, the Indian Political Science Association, was formed. Its first conference was held from 22nd to 24th December at Banaras University. The following year, the association's journal, the Indian Journal of Political Science, started publishing in September 1939. D.N. Banerjee's original association was with the economics department at Dhaka as a teacher right from the inception of the department in 1921, which coincided with the foundation of Dhaka University as well. His interest in the Indian Constitution became noticed after the Government of India Act of 1919. And lucid English prose made it accessible to a global academic audience and those informed about the nitty-gritty of Indian government and politics. While working on the scholarly contributions of Indian political scientists, I found a very old and almost brief pamphlet by D.N. Banerjee, The Resurrection of the Congress, published in 1920. The publication was a gift from a profound scholar of the Indian Constitution, Dr. Gandhi Austin, to the Indian Institute Library of Oxford, which entered the Bodleian Library on 12th March 1986, only to meet me in March 2023. In that pathway, I took a closer look at progress in the aftermath of the first partition of Bengal in 1905 and the adoption of a policy of non-cooperation by the party. And the sympathy for Bengal Congress leader Chittaranjan Das on the one hand and its closer links with the British establishment on the other was similar to that particular generation of Bengal cultural elites who were trained within the structures of colonial universities and had flourishing careers during the transitional phase from colonial to decolonial times. This dual character of a Bengali scholarly elite that sympathizes with the nationalist cause while being well connected with the British administrative system can be found even within legal luminaries like Alexander Vishwas, Pamela Bosho, and other legal scholars. The Department of Political Science at the University of Calcutta was academically vibrant right from the initial days. Among the early teachers of political science at Calcutta, Ian Manning was the most prolific. After being appointed as a professor of the department, he published 4 papers in 1949, 1 in the Indian Law Review and 3 in the Modern Review, considering the progress and future of India's constitutional democracy. Apart from pointing out some issues of basic reforms, Banerjee has been writing this from 1926 on his first book, Indian Constitution and its actual work, something like that. He was 46 and his last book came in 1966, which was a Supreme Court and his judgment on the Uttar Pradesh legislative assembly and something like that. So 40 years, actually, he was very much committed to constitutional studies. In 1950, in the 13th annual conference of Indian Political Science Association was hosted by the Department of Political Science of Calcutta University with the leadership of Banerjee. Banerjee continued commenting on the newly adopted Indian Constitution in the Modern Review and the Indian Law Review. At the same time, Ajit Kumar Shane published a book, Islamic State and Other Political Essays, and a paper on the new federalism in Pakistan in parliamentary affairs. Ajit Shane moved to Calcutta University from Dhaka in 1950. After serving as the chairman of the Department of Political Science at Dhaka University from 1947 to 1950. So 47, Banerjee moved to Dhaka and Ajit Shane then became the chair. And then Ajit Shane also moved to Calcutta in 1950. I went to Dhaka University for field of knowledge strategy and this information. They have pictures there. Missing pictures were Banerjee and Shane, but in the records they had the page here. In fact, they were looking at pictures, and one of the faculty members asked me to give the pictures, and I said that I have thoroughly searched for a lot of records I couldn't get it. In fact, they had his son, they were about T-Ball, who was bureaucrat, he was not in a very good shape, so he couldn't also respond to it, so I couldn't get any private archives or private collections. From the 20 teachers of political science, almost half were appointed much earlier than the formal establishment of the department. Shruti Shakur, the Google were appointed as early as 1916. You can see that here. While the remaining 7 were appointed between 1923 and 1940. 9 teachers who had previously taught the joint political economy and political philosophy course were inducted into the department. By the 1940s to 1960s, it reflected Western epistemological interests. The nationalist movement in the Department of Political Science in Calcutta was prominent in the form of research interest in the Indian Constitution, and the author of several books and articles of particular interest in the Indian Constitution. He was described as one of the pioneering scholars who contributed to the making of Indian constitutional studies. Now, I'm skipping the Banerjee a little bit. I found and I'm coming to the more important books of Banerjee.
Which term is talking about the world which in 1960?
Because he was the first one to be appointed in the initial department where the Department of Economic Political Philosophy. So the 9 teachers who were appointed before 1948 were inducted into the 48 department. And so there were some teachers in 1930 who later became the SML chairperson after Banerjee's retirement. So that's about it. I found a copy of Banerjee's book or Fundamental Rights, Their Nature and Extent as Judicially Determined on the library shelves at the Faculty of Law at the University of Oxford in October 2022. This is the exact. And these both are fundamentally factors followed by complement volume, some aspects of the Indian Constitution. The book was published in 1960 and was gifted to the Law Library of Oxford with clear handwritten works. And he sent this book to Oxford Law Library, and it said that with the highest compliments of the author of favor of the this time his head was altered. Now, the letter was some aspect of the Indian Constitution in 1962 was a companion volume of our fundamental rights which were published in 1960. Some aspects of the Indian Constitution was a commentary on the evolution of the Indian parliamentary form of government from the 1910s and on the issues of the Indian presidency, the nature of the Indian Union, with particular reference to relations between the central government and the constituent state governments, some key features of Indian judiciary and the parliamentary privileges in India. The book was based on the proceedings of the Constitutional Assembly of India debates, the report of the Indian Press Commission 1954, and the quoted report of the Law Commission of India on the reform of judicial administration. The book covered the study of political theories and political institutions for around 45 years. Now, it was interesting that how Banerjee was in the book, and was scrutinizing with some aspects of the Indian Constitution. For example, when scrutinizing the term sovereign democratic republic inserted in the preamble of the Indian Constitution, Banerjee writes, the corresponding expression in the objective resolution was independent sovereign republic. It was changed into sovereign democratic republic by the drafting committee of the Constitutional Assembly of India. The justification given by the Ambedkar was that independence is usually implied in the word sovereign, so that there is hardly anything to be gained by adding the word independent. Banerjee further clarifies in the following way. We agree that the word sovereign independent or independent sovereign are somewhat tautological. And we should, in a constitutional document like the Constitution of India, certainly aim at some economic precision in the choice of words. And it was certainly a very no-nonsense request. But this is not the expression sovereign democratic republic, also somewhat tautological. One can understand the use of such an expression as a sovereign republic or a sovereign democracy or even a sovereign democratic state. But the term sovereign democratic republic, acquired tautological, is not also a little slow. He moved on to justify how the adjective democratic was unnecessary before the political terminology republic, into the etymological meaning of the term republic from the annals of political history, as well as the related common use of the term while going to the new indigenous. He suggested that the republic would have also been replaced with state or commonwealth, and that the term democratic was unnecessary. Thus, a democratic republic was nothing but an avoidable tautology. By the early 1960s, it was deteriorating, although it would publish another work on the Supreme Court in 1966. Now, my second conference called Virendra Singh, Marxist public intellectual and political scientist. Dean Banerjee's colleague, Virendra Singh, 1902 to 1961, often recognized as Dhiren Singh or Dhiren Singh, was a common Marxist faculty member at this political society. Like Banerjee, Singh was also prolific and wrote several books in the 1940s and 1950s, which directly engaged with the relevant issues at that time, ranging from the topic of minorities to India's independence and the case for linguistic states. Besides being a Marxist critic and a critical thinker, Singh was a leading Calcutta journalist and political science. Singh was a lecturer in constitutional and administrative law at the Department of Economics since 1930 and became a faculty member of the Department of Political Science in 1948. He moved to academia from journalism, not out of choice, but by compulsion, due to his constant disagreement with newspaper proprietors on political issues. Singh was educated here school, Presidency College and Calcutta University. He was promoted to Surendra Banerjee Chair of Professor of Political Science in Calcutta in early 1961 after Dean Banerjee's retirement. However, he hardly served in that position as he died on 2nd May 1961. Sen was a member of the All India Congress Committee for a brief period. Later, he disassociated himself from the party over sharp ideological differences. As a devout Marxist, he tried to promote Indo-Soviet friendship. He was the general secretary of the West Bengal Indo-Soviet Cultural Society and the West Bengal Peace Council. He visited the Soviet Union in 1956. Sen's doctoral thesis was slightly updated and published by the University of Calcutta in January 1940, with the book's first read close to 800 pages and 90 exhaustive chapters. The thesis in the form of a term, the problem of minorities, was a unique contribution from a magnificent scholar and a socially devoted intellectual with a resolute spirit. The book is historically significant for at least two reasons. First, it was its first major publication. Secondly, in India, it was the first attempt at a comprehensive academic analysis of the complex issue of minorities while considering all the political developments at that time. This was examined by Keith and Adalasky and Jagger. We have the Jagger Library in the university. The book was written in the context, the thesis was submitted in 1933 and it got an award in 1936, and the book was published in 1940. I'm reading for the secondary module. The book was written in the context of the existence of the League of Nations and its treaties that recognize racial, religious, and linguistic minorities. It was an exploration and assessment of international law and laws of major countries at that time to protect minorities. At the same time, it was a historical account of the evolution of various treaties about safeguarding minorities from the early 19th century, along with the evaluation of the League of Nations and the Commonwealth of India Acts of 1990 and 1935. Now, between 47 to 1958, Sen wrote a trilogy, Revolution by Consent in 1947, then From Raj to Swaraj in 1954, and Paradox of Freedom in 1958. And all three volumes should be actually read together because mostly a kind of Marxist account on the India's bourgeois democracy and some kind of commentaries on what was happening in the Soviet thinking, particularly in the push, just after Stalin years. And also in Kerala, there was a document in 1957 which was covered by the Nehru administration. So there was a lot of commentaries on that. In the Greek country training case, Sen was acknowledged for his importance as a creative thinker of Indian politics. Sen's Marxist critique of the transfer of power at the time when the decision of official transfer of power was taken before the formation of the Constituent Assembly, and yet the final transfer of power was subject to the concept of the crown, puts a question to the so-called political revolution by consent. The Marxist critique of Sen was a stark contrast to the liberal ideological underpinning that was exemplified in the liberal constitutionalism of Banerjee. Moreover, while Banerjee was an academic scholar of the discipline with excellent contributions to the making of modern constitutional studies, Sen was a public intellectual whose Marxist commentaries on the Indian state and its various governmental apparatuses were relevant when they were articulated. However, Sen was virtually a one-man involved in Indian political science, whose legal acumen was widely appreciated, but the political questions he raised were ignored. By the 1970s, among the fraternity of Indian political scientists, a full-scale Marxist study of the Indian political system was yet to evolve at a time when Marxist approaches at the global level were not uniform. And this is the point that was made by Sumati Gorchove, who worked here, who wrote a professional paper on constitutional studies that was happening and directly quoting from him. Besides Jane Banerjee and Jane Sen, another scholar who immensely contributed to the growing academic literature in constitutional studies was Mohesh Chandra Ghosh, 1910 to 1985. Ghosh graduated from Calcutta Presidency College with economics honors in 1930, passed his MA in 1932 and LLB in 1925, all with distinction from Calcutta University. In 1941, he was awarded the Griffith Prize by Calcutta University, and in 1959, he received his doctorate from the University of London. Mohesh Ghosh started his career as an applied lecturer of comparative government in 1948 at Calcutta. After his early stint as a teacher at Islamia College, later renamed Modern Azhar College, Bishop Robert College, and Woodley Morrison College, Ghosh became a professor of political science first in the Department of Economics at Presidency College in 1949. Later, he served the Department of Political Science at Presidency from 1961 to 1968. In between, he took leave from the college and in 1965 became a centenary professor of public administration at Calcutta University. After his formal retirement from West Bengal Education Service in 1968 at the age of 58, he continued to teach at Calcutta University until he retired from the university in April 1975. He contributed to the constitutional studies in the 1940s and 1950s with a particular focus on the constitutions of India and selected European and Islamic states. Now, I come to the next subsection of my paper, which is called Calcutta Political Science in the 1960s and 70s, research output in political thought and research methodology. The 1960s were called a development decade, thanks to planned social change in both the socialist and non-socialist worlds, and the problem of bureaucracy rigidification in Latin America, Africa, and Asia. In the 1960s, three conceptual approaches to political science, namely normative, structural, and behavioral, were prominent in the global arena. In the early 1970s, the American political scientist David Apter and an African political scientist Samuel Stephen Bushi, based at the University of Dar es Salaam in Tanzania, jointly wrote a paper on the disciplinary contributions of political science. In that paper, they summarized the three approaches in the following points. I quote: the normative approach focuses on the values, beliefs, norms, and traditional inertia, which together give rise to a particular ideological orientation and influence the choices which ought to be made. The structural approach, on the other hand, examines the patterns of social action and interpersonal relationships. So, social structure too places limitations upon the choices that can be made by individuals and groups. Finally, the behavioral approach, a fairly recent one, examines the reasons and motives behind the choices actually made by individuals and small groups. It examines personality variables and dynamics of group behavior. This was a paper which was published in the Social Science in 1972. There are several discipline contributions of political science after and Bushi made these remarks. Among the political scientists in Calcutta in the 1960s and 1970s, the interest in political thought in general and a focus on normative theory in particular were noticed among the works of Maidul Bhattacharya and Afro-Asian. Although Marxist studies had a previous expression in Wittgenstein Sen's works in the 1950s, a systematic form of Marxist studies at Calcutta University became prominent in the late 1960s in the context of the changing pattern of Western politics towards the left. Marxist, Gandhian, and socialist studies at Calcutta grew in the late 1960s and in the 1970s with the leadership of Maidul Bhattacharya, an intellectual of the revolutionary socialist party. Bhattacharya was a scholar of the discipline and a noted party intellectual. He's not a public intellectual like Lian Sen, his predecessor at Calcutta University. Although one can actually debate whether one can actually strictly say that one is a party intellectual, not a public intellectual, but I'm just saying that Lian Sen was in that sense not as a partisan person as Bhattacharya was. Bhattacharya was awarded a D.Litt at the University of Calcutta in 1966 for his voluminous work on the political philosophy of Mohandas Karamchand. The doctoral thesis of Bhattacharya was written from a Marxist standpoint and was published in 1969 with a foreword by the Indian anthropologist Nirmal Kumar Ghosh. Bhattacharya was trained in a Marxist tradition and was exposed to the theoretical and political developments in Latin America, China, and Europe. He offered a brilliant analysis of the humanist content of Marxism and revolutionary socialism. In a talk delivered at the Regency Hall in Calcutta on 17 January 1960, on the occasion of the 6th anniversary of Damien Law, the text was published in journals such as the Radical Humanists from Calcutta, the Call from Delhi, and Socialist Current from London. In the 1970s, Bhattacharya also critically engaged with Chile's parliamentary road to socialism, Santiago Carrillo's Euro-communism, and the ideological conflict between the Chinese Communist Party and the Albanian Communist Party. In the 1960s, in the field of political thought, one can mention the contribution of Omar Mukherjee in 1927 to 2023, who was trained at the London School of Economics and Political Science. He became a stalwart teacher at Presidency College and as a visiting faculty of Calcutta University. He completed his MA in Political Science from Calcutta in 1958. His doctoral thesis on T.H. Green was published in 1967 as the Ethics of Obedience, a study of the philosophy of T.H. Green. Mukherjee became active in leading the Council for Political Studies, a professional body of political scientists, founded in Calcutta on 14 February 1972, incidentally the Valentine's Day. Valentine's Day was not a very big occasion during that time. He became the editor of the Council for Political Studies journal Socialist Perspective in June 1973 and remained in that position for 4 decades. In the realm of normative political thought and historical approaches, both Maidul and Afro-Asian have carried forward the legacy of Upendra Kosha, often called UN Kosha, 1886 to 1969. Kosha was a student of Sir John Equality and graduated in economics in 1926, followed by a BSc in economics from the London School of Economics and Political Science. In 1923, he published a volume on the history of Hindu political theories. Kosha became the first head of the Department of Political Science College in 1960, after starting the Department of Political Economy and Philosophy at Calcutta from 1923, and in the Undergraduate Economics Department of Presidency College from the early 1930s. These are data sources that I get from secondary volumes and the archive that is now getting made by this Chicago project on presidents of the global history. When Kosha retired from the college in 1964, his most brilliant students contributed to a volume discussing growth and choice, published in 1969 when Kosha passed it. Incidentally, those brilliant students, Amar Kumar Sen, Abbas Majumdar, Meghna Tirupati, Ashok Chandra Guru, Amrita Shukla, Shukla Chakraborty, Pranab Bhatt, and Amar Kumar Bhatt, at that time when India stopped theoretical economics and wrote magnificent essays with immense mathematical clarity. Interestingly, no political scientists contributed to the volume. So, and in the larger postscript that I'm planning, so 69, when Kosha passed away and the growth and choice came out with Abbas Majumdar as an editor and author, real economics, economic machine. And 69 was the first year when the economics prize of Nobel Prize was given. 29 years later, in 1998, Saint will gave the Nobel Prize, and another 20, something around 20 years in 2017, the presidency was celebrating a centenary. Saint will gave the Johannesburg Prize, which is nicknamed as the Nobel Prize in Political Science. So, again, in the location 30th of September 2017. Empirical political science only became a trend at Calcutta University due to the intervention of Mahmoud Chatterjee, who was interested in recent methods of comparative politics and election studies. Chatterjee was trained in empirical political science at the University of Chicago in the late 1960s and early 1970s, and later taught recent methods among other courses in the Department of Political Science at Calcutta from the 1970s. Before finishing his doctorate in 1975 from the University of Chicago on the politics of labor unions in India, as a young lecturer at Calcutta, in 1968, Chatterjee published a paper on the Swadeshi movement within the Congress Party, and another on structural concepts in the Aristotelian treatise Politics in 1973. Chatterjee penned another research paper on conflict relation with the Indian labor movement in 1976. If we analyze the research output of Bhattacharya, Mukhopadhyay, and Chatterjee, then from the late 1960s onwards, there was a visible shift in the research interests of teachers in the Department of Political Science at Calcutta, with some interest in Gandhian studies, Marxism, empiricism, and behaviorism. It was also a new political movement, distinct from the earlier phase of research concerns in Indian constitutional studies from the 1940s to the mid-1960s, and specific response to the emergence of a post-colonial state. In this regard, the focus of critical thought at Calcutta University bloomed along with behavioral and empirical political science in the 1970s, supposedly the decade of the post-behavioural trend in the global academy. Now I come to the next section, which is called researching. I have 15 minutes and I will sum up. Research interest in international politics at Calcutta, 1950s to 1970s. The 1950s saw growing interest in international law and nuclear weapons among Indian political scientists, lawmakers, jurists, and bureaucrats. Indian foreign policy was primarily guided by the position of the non-aligned movement after the Bandung Conference in 1955. Thus, maintaining distance from both the USA and the USSR during the high tide of the Cold War in the 1950s and 1960s was analyzed by scholars of international relations. At the same time, international law became a domain of interest and expertise for India to reach like Rajav Paul and internationally renowned legal scholars like Ram Prakash Anand or R.P. Anand. Our former Vice Chancellor of Calcutta University from 1944 to 46 was the famous dissenting judge in the Tokyo trials. After the Tokyo trials, Father came to be recognized as an expert on international law and was a member of the International Law Commission, saying set up by the United Nations from 1954 until his death in 1966. Similarly, Narendra Singh, 18 March 1941 to 11 December 1988, a member of the Constitutional Assembly of India during 1947 to 48, representing the princely state of Gurukul in Rajasthan, wrote an entire monograph titled Nuclear Weapons and International Law. The book was published under the auspices of New Delhi's Indian Council of World Affairs. As a career monograph, the Prince of Gurukul was clear that his treatise contained his personal views, not that of government of India. Singh was a member of the Indian Civil Service and held various equality degrees from reputable universities, including an MA and LLM from Cambridge University, an AM DLIT and LLB from Trinity College Dublin, a DPhil from Calcutta University, and a DLIT from Bihar University. Bihar University was established in 1952, later on in 1994, for 50 years, it became the Bihar University. Singh later served as India's fourth chief election commissioner between 1st October 1972 and 6 February 1973, and became the president of the International Court of Justice in The Hague between 1985 and 1988. In 1973, Singh received the Bharat for his contributions to public affairs. Throughout his career, Singh has been interested in international organizations, international law, and human rights. Singh's study was a detailed exposition of the nature of the laws of war, customary international law, and treaty law, with particular reference to conventional arms and nuclear weapons. He started the relevant academic literature of the topic, including the famous lectures on what he was documented as Science International Relations. Much like Clark, the work of Singh highlights specifically the atom bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and the devastating impact in terms of casualties, percentage of deaths by distance, causes of death, and wounds and material damage. On radioactive influence, happened in the late 1950s and almost 1.5 decades after the great genocide of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, Singh was in fact trying to point out that some thermonuclear bombs are more dangerous than atomic bombs, while reminding the readers of his knowledge about the newly evolving technology in nuclear weapons during the Cold War. Like the Jewish scholar saying, political science at Calcutta University and Shubham Mukherjee were interested in international law. Mukherjee was interested in public international law from the early 1950s and continued writing until the early 1970s. And he wrote a book in 1971 on Bangladesh and international law. Although Mukherjee was primarily interested in international law, as a young faculty member of Calcutta University, he published a couple of short commentaries for the first assembly election results in West Bengal and the municipal administration of Kolkata published in 1952. Mukherjee's colleague Santosh Kumar Chatterjee, the professor father of Dr. Chatterjee, was also wrote a treatise on international law. The senior Chatterjee contributed to the theory of international relations with a core focus on the interdependence of sovereign nation states to the intervention of international law. At the same time, Ramesh Ghosh, which we have also already mentioned in the previously, an expert in foreign and Indian constitutions, wrote about international treaties and war politics with 3 published monographs between 1951 and 1970. As a senior for studies in social science at Calcutta, initially international politics was a major research interest among political scientists, thanks to the first major research work of public category in the early 1970s. After joining the same as a fellow in political science in 1973, Kennedy was engaged in publications on international politics and political development in reputed academic journals. Before joining the same year, Kennedy did a brief stint as a faculty member at the University of Rochester as an assistant professor of political science and at Presidency College Calcutta, and then as a reader of political science at Guru Nanak University of Windsor in the early 1970s. He was trained in empirical political science with cutting-edge contributions to international relations theory. His doctoral thesis was on the arms race and global balance of power, with a systematic application of game theory during the heydays of the Cold War. The Woodrow Fellowship at the University of Rochester and Chatterjee finished his thesis in 1971 and he was awarded the doctorate in 1972. His first book, based on his doctoral dissertation work at Rochester, was eventually published in 1975 with the title Arms, Alliances and Stability, the Development of the Structure of International Politics. In the book, the real concern was to examine the threat of nuclear war, the strategies involved in building alliances, and how equilibrium is achieved in international politics with peaceful coexistence between the socialists and the capitalists. Kennedy thoroughly analyzed international order with particular reference to systemic change, the classical system of balance of power relations among sovereign nation states, the transitional systems of imperialism, interwar systems, and finally the groundwork period of the bipolar system councils. Eventually offered technical mathematical models to convince his American professors like John E. Mueller, George Wester, William Reichler, A. William Steinberg, and Kenneth A. Chesley, besides an elaborate discussion of the Marxist theories of international relations. I think that's a very interesting one. This was much smaller because that's where we just published 3 papers, but in the larger book, there's a lot of academic literature that we brought into and extend academic literature. It was very, I think, because way ahead of its time in the context of Indian academia. I will come to later. Kennedy's first book has been one of the least cited among major volumes. By July 2024, there were 54 citations, of which only 7 were in the 1970s. Although in recent years, from the 1980s onwards, the citations have gone up. The book got fewer citations in the 1970s for 2 reasons. First, it soon left the scholarly stage of quantitative political science. Hence, the global scholars of the discipline would hardly appreciate the rich theoretical interventions by the time it would seem to will within the disciplinary domain of international relations. Secondly, it was based in India and that too in the backwaters of Calcutta, where political scientists were not interested in the specialized area of analytical theory. In contrast, political scientists at CSDs in Delhi had some interest in empiricism with a particular focus on voting behavior and educational studies, structural functional analysis, rational choice theory, and behaviorism, most of which Kennedy was already trained. Moreover, other political scientists interested in international politics in the late 1960s and early 1970s were stationed in the School of International Studies, later merged with the newly built Jawaharlal Nehru University in 1969 in New Delhi. In contrast, international relations experts at Nagpur University are not engaging with Kennedy's first group. Kennedy's contribution to international relations has some predecessors, among Indian political scientists that should look at them, South strategy, and jurists like Arthur and Ravindra Singh. However, methodologically, Kennedy used mathematical models in his research rather than the previously historical and normative and legal approaches of his predecessors. Now, finally, come to the critique of positivism and a search for an alternative Marxist explanatory theory at CSSSC. By the early 1970s, with the publication of John Rawls's treatise, A Theory of Justice, and a liberated response by Robert Downing in 1974, along with the exposure of the limitations of the so-called value-neutral empirical political analysis of the 1950s and 1960s, American political scientists were already dissatisfied with behaviorism. Such dissatisfaction with the behavioral revolution was already expressed by David Easter, a prominent behavioral political scientist himself, in his presidential address delivered to the 65th annual meeting of the American Political Science Association, held between September 2 to September 6, 1969, in New York, with a call for a new political revolution in political science, the name of post-behavioural. It was in such a context that a new generation of political scientists of Calcutta and the newly founded Center for Study in Social Sciences would begin to question American-style behavioral social sciences and the liberal normative political theory with an alternative explanatory Marxism. The Center for Studies in Social Science in Calcutta was established in February 1973, and its primary academic staff was recruited in the summer of the same year. In 1973, the year of the foundation of CSSSC, besides Martin Kennedy, 2 more fellows in political science joined the institute, Shivan Chorwe and Shomala Dr. Apart from Kennedy's initial research on nationalism in Bengal and Dr. Gupta's work on the Communist Party of India from 1920 to 64, the most fruitful work of political science in the 1970s that came out of the same year was a state of political theory from Marxist cases, jointly written by Subhuti Kavira, Kennedy, Chorwe, and Dr. Gupta. The book was written by a new generation of prominent Marxist scholars in Calcutta who were influenced by the anti-Vietnam War movements. The state of political theory was essentially a collection of critical essays. The book argued that criticism as a method was looked down with suspicion by established academicians during the 1970s and the previous decades. It asked questions about detailed historical orthodoxies and methodological inconsistencies. It precisely wondered, even if one is confronted with the projection of theories as weak, inadequate, and prone to unscrupulous assumptions, what steps should be taken? Why do political science proceed? The starting point for such critical reflections on existing and dominant political theories in the 1970s asserted the need for alternative theories. He pointed out that alternative theories must adopted which can overcome imprecision, inconsistencies, and discordance with the observed facts. The political science at the same time in the 1970s believed that the Marxist theory of society was a neglected field. The essays in the book promoted the basic principles of the Marxist theory of society. The precise key of the positivist method was that once principles are seriously examined, used, and tested for their logical power and explanatory strength, they would offer scientific results and understanding problems. The authors questioned such an understanding of politics through the positivist method. At the same time, the book's main concern was that there were a lot of criticisms, biases, and gaps in the Marxist theory, which should be taken seriously. Therefore, the aim was to construct or refashion new theories, concepts, and assumptions. Nonetheless, the book proposed two things. First, it tried to review the non-Marxist theories of politics in the methodological foundations, their relationship with other social sciences, their status as a general theory of society, as specific combinations in political development. Secondly, it tried to put forward a Marxist theory as a general starting point for constructing theories and building ideological premises. And both Dr. Gupta and Chatterjee advanced the possible political development by reviewing the works of different theorists who understood political development in terms of stability, ideology, and materiality. In which they forwarded the need to rethink the conceptual terrain of political development. One of the essays in the book was an alternative theory of society from a Marxist viewpoint, and critically the liberal theory of democracy and politics. Now, basically, if you look at the wide range from the 1940s to the 1970s, three things are coming up. So the 40s to 60s, primarily 1940s to mid 60s, were the dominance of the constitutional studies and the initial Marxist studies by the same. Constitutional studies was largely being promoted by Devendra Banerjee. And by the late 1960s, there was some kind of dissatisfaction with the Indian Constitution. It seems that there is one period where the initial interest in constitutional studies was some kind of, moving on, and you have a more interesting insights on Gandhism through Guru Bhattacharya and Rakhoji Chatterjee a little bit, labor studies with Rakhoji Chatterjee, empirical political science with Rakhoji Chatterjee. And at the same time, all research of empirical political science from Dr. Chatterjee. But then, Chatterjee, Calcutta, Dr. Gupta, and Chauve were by the second half of the 70s, they were already disillusioned with empiricism because there were a lot of problems with how empiricists work and how and this dissatisfaction with empiricism and also because of political inherent also. So what Rakhoji Chatterjee maintained this interesting empirical political theory and it was recently, because last year he actually published another book on survey research and he worked on comparative politics, hypnosis and now. But the 70s, I think, was a crucial point. Particularly in 1969, when Guru Bhattacharya's book, Evolution of Political Gandhi, was published in 1979-80. That particularly is a turning point where the dominance of the normative and the historical approaches of the earlier generation was somehow questioned. But that normativism was very much liberal political thought, like some bit of this or THP. But then liberal political theory was also questioned by the centrist political science in the 90s. So an international law part, which was very much there in the 1950s and 1960s, with as long as 1971. But then there's some kind of dying. That is that. In the International School of International Studies, there was still work going on, but that's not kind of. So I think this is the basic kind of shift that I'm pointing out. I'm not promoting a very major thesis in the paper because it's just a kind of a review of literature and kind of shifts that has been made that is going on in the disciplinary literature, and also pointing out how the base of the political scientists were kind of who was why they were trained. In the larger portion, I will talk about all these ideas were mentioned and what happened to them from the 1980s to 2020s. So that will be a major history. I think and I will stop here. Having this debate, questions and answers, comments and suggestions. Thank you.
Many thanks for the presentation. I was wondering if you take out what is simply the between about relevant change, would that really change your story? Or would it remain, I mean, would you actually specifically detail like BBC news, right? And still say the same story? That's one question. The other one is to do with, you mentioned initially, decolonization, the word you mentioned a few times, initially. But I think that for an outsider like me who doesn't really know what it was, so I didn't really get how decolonization entered this story. Except, of course, there are parts of challenge and that part we know, being 80s, 90s kids. But we don't know how decolonization as an idea was present before for this earlier scholars writing their work. Right? How is normative political theory? Is it pro-decolonization, anti-decolonization? What is it doing? Like how are they? That story is not being told, I think, by you. So those are my concerns because otherwise it's such a great presentation. Thank you.
I will be better to actually answer one by one, not because the question will be vague. The point is that while listening to the question, I have some things mind going on, and I think I will be forgetting those. And it's better want to give more importance to the questions that you asked now and later. This is one way of writing about the past. And historians that you are trained will write a history of a subject or a discipline within a particular set of time in a different manner. I will give all these details because there is a certain kind of literature which gives these details, and it's one because very important. Why? Because I think the discipline training in a university where someone is trained, the kind of practices that a particular person goes through, that has an impact later. However, you want to come out of that initial pedagogical practices, the traces will be there in your scholarly output. And I find how many scholars, if not all, most of the scholars, but I think I find whatever political practice that I've studied, that kind of thing was there. For example, all from there was this cage game kind of cases. It is an original kind of thesis in that sense. But then he remained with that thesis. And his interest in Western political thought was known as a teacher and for textbooks. But 50 years later, after 1967, 2017, when President was celebrating his bicentenary and same was getting John's guidelines, he actually published his thesis on the different. And so in between, he was more inclined to the left, but then the passes he later said that he's actually not left his neighbor and his Spaniards like that. But anyway, the substantive answer is that I think that details are important because it has some kind of impact on the later work. So that was there. Without empirical details, I could have actually told the same story, but I thought that it might be just useful for a layman reader where this process is coming from. Because the larger project is the university and the disciplines, and I thought that the university training of that political scientist must be emphasized. And with the precise base. I'm not a historian, I'm not a historian. Although I'm kind of learning from the history of scholarship, and then I'm going to archives look at the different old newspapers and the old syndicate minutes of different pedagogic sources that I could have read, although I'm not sure whether I could be using the pedagogy in all my chapters because I get to get access to all the archives in other university departments. And that I have, but so let me check, how I'm going to plan out the book when I usually do that. As far as the decolonization story is concerned, you see, I'm not using decolonization as a conceptual term in the overall project. For me, it's a time period where I look at 1980s, 1970s as a kind of decolonization, which merged with the global decolonization process that was going on in the several African, Asian, and Latin American countries. In India, too, the 1920s was a starting point of mass politics against colonial rule, and also at the same time, most of the departments, the universities were established from the 1920s onwards, and certainly the political science department started from 1921. So that is the thing. As far as the concept of decolonization is one work which was done by one of the actors, Yashoda Dogadu, which I didn't have time to comment, was that when he was fellow here, he actually wrote an occasional paper on the decolonization thesis, particularly the MNRI debate with Lenin. And his basic argument was that the number of crises that happened in the third international, the second coming the second international fighting already created those conditions. So that was there in the paper, and because of that, it was time to in March.
Maidul, thank you for very detailed paper. Again, I'm coming from outside the discipline, so as a lady, when you're speaking about the discipline that the university, so I'm leaving on the decolonization, which I've understood that you have to deal as a period rather than in periods. What I missed was what was in the syllabus. What were these people who were joining a newly formed political science department in 1948? What were they learning? What was the canon? Because the first question, and the first decolonization also in disciplines happened certainly in my field in literature with a shattering of the canon. You basically, the first thing you do is you attack the canon. So coming from that perspective, I was wondering whether your decoloniality thesis can be furthered by some sort of agenda, if there was any, among the political. What was the reading list and what was taught, and did they attempt to decolonize by attacking the canon of political science as it existed at the time?
Yes, thank you. I think this was a very, very important question, and the Calcutta University syllabus was very, very traditional, and it was full of liberal scholarship, and Western political thought was the main canon. Other international law was there as a paper, but then you have basically comparative governments, and political thought. And political thought was largely Western political thought. It's only in the Indian political thought paper where some Indian thinkers were ahead. But sometimes it was an optional paper, not a compulsory paper. And there was a syllabus change movement that happened much later in the mid-1960s started. And finally, the main idea was that because of the heavy dose of liberal political theory in the syllabus, there was a move to introduce Marxist political theory and readings of Marx, Lenin, Mao. And that was basically given leadership by the different factions of the student leaders. And there were three factions: the CPI and the CPAs and the Student K3 and the Sudarshan Rajal, and they were on part of it. Also part of it. And in 1969, 70, finally the syllabus was there, but because of the factions, the syllabus hardly changed much. It was almost like a copy paste thing. In the 60s, there was, in the 64, 65, there was one syllabus change, but then the Marxist theory was not, and that's exactly why so I don't think that there was much of the challenging the canon from the uh, from uh, from within the administration. It was more of a student kind of revolt against that syllabus. And only in 1975 onwards that syllabus moved, and then after the government that story in a different chapter, in the pedagogy chapter, which I presented in the workshop that happened in the JVMRC. So that's going to be another kind of session. Yeah.
Just wanted to pick up from Rosemary's question, which is, so if you want to do an intellectual genealogy, political scientists who work and taught in India, they might have been trained in Oxford or Cambridge, they might have been trained in European universities in Germany, especially in the London universities. Then you have to write the intellectual history of those institutions. And so that story becomes a very different kind of story of migration thought and pedagogical styles and so on, which is fine. But when you're talking about political science as a discipline that separates itself out from economics, right? It becomes a domain of certain kind of positivistic, empirical kind of object of study. And my question was the interesting question. I think buried all of this. The details are interesting. Is that very much in the classroom, maybe not just in the syllabus, in the class, in debates, in writing, certain field of political study, political science, which we call Indian. I know it's a very big question. The word does the word Indian at all make a difference? Right? So then the question of post-independence, political movements, what happens around us. Well, otherwise, you would see that those, as you said, old liberal ideas we have studied. And one of our end given calculations, it was the department was political thought. Yeah. I think the same line was used 20 years ago. We stood at it. But that is the other thing, that a kind of maybe students of such luminaries, of what they produce, where they went. That's a different story. And today, is there, and I think there is political Indian science, just as Indian anthropology or Indian sociology, like yeah. So it's a very large question, but something that might give you a different mind of the genealogy, different mind of history of ideas and history of pedagogy. That would be as interesting as the details about who was the point when, who talked, who did best. That's a sorry,
No, yes, I think that's a very, very good question. And I think this particular, I think attempt to answer this question will be taken the pedagogy chapter. So my argument is that concentration will come to the right from the beginning of the program is that what was Indian essentially expressed in the Indian constitutional studies. So Indian constitution is something as a new document.
yes.
And both the research output as well as topics in the paper on Indian history, which was there initially in the academic syllabus, and Indian government and politics. That became something new. Although in the syllabus, the constitutional part was less because there's a lot of debates going on, but it was following the output that the Indianness comes with this modern document of the universities. And the initial commentaries of the several state elections and a lot of political scientists, including Supreme Court Mukherjee, are commenting on the right to the first wave election 1952. So that is something which is Indian government politics is something. On Indian political thought again, there was some kind of Indian, so there was Portillo and the medieval Islamic thought, those were there. But as I said, that Indian political thought was the only Indian thing in the meta syllabus. And Indian constitution is the Indian government and politics were Indian. Otherwise, in the international law, yes, there was some one or two Indian authors who were look at this DHT and how international law was something which was maybe taught. There were treaties, there were also textbooks on international law written by academic political scientists, but we produced on the strategy standards already, book, which were published in 1963. So otherwise, it's a political thought in government is essentially non-equal. Now, while facing the thing is that because the professional body, which is the Indian Political Science Association, it's called Indian Political Science, was established in 1938 and the journal got out the next year, 1959. And a lot of political scientists of India, including that of Calcutta, were writing in that journal. And it's still a professional body which is still very much active. The quality of that organization and the quality of the journal is falling over the years. But that's the only thing that is coming up. I will say that decolonization is conceptually it has not made enough inroads. In fact, Indian political science has not become not enough decolonial if we compare with other disciplines like history or even literature or even sociology. I don't know why, but then I still answer the only response to the colonial, the only decolonial part was this one, the nationalist movement, which was the expression in the constitutional studies. I think as of now, I have only these answers, and that is coming out from the evidence that I gave, the material that.
The more important topic is the post-colonial state.
Yes.
I mean, who were criticizing an arrogant state?
Yes.
For grounds.
Yes.
Now, maybe some of that was happening outside of those. But
And it is also possible. It is also possible that, let's say, the Nokiite and the Archean critique of the university, that was already there from the let's say 50s, 60s, and by 70s it was very much there. But it didn't actually became a part of the academic university political science syllabus. It became part much later. So in much later, in the 1990s or when we were students in residency from 2003, we did a bit of alternative there in the national library. So, but otherwise, so the academic of course, something was already there from the late 60s onwards with research out. Takeover was there in the syllabus, but then it was again in the Indian political thought paper, which was again optional paper from maybe the Bengali connection was there. Yeah. Gurudarshan and also. Yes.
I was just having two thoughts. One is a very obvious one, perhaps, which is that I mean, in the whole period that you're speaking about, no women anywhere, and I was wondering whether it may be true of many other disciplines. It's not possibly common, but how true of other disciplines? Is there a sense of how the class, the student body was changing? Were there more women amongst the students? And I'm not just speaking in terms of gender, in terms of social justice in general. Who are these people who are coming to study this discipline? Unless we get a sense of that, how do we then get a sense? We can't get a sense only from the syllabus or only from the. How do we get a sense of where this is playing out? What is the field in which this is playing out? That's one. The second is following on the question of decolonization. I was actually thinking about the question of language. And because you spoke of some of these figures also as public intellectuals and as someone who is also somewhat of a public intellectual, I would like to ask, Is there not a vernacular circulation of ideas which may not have been included in the syllabi at this point of time, but were very much a part of, let's say, party classes, for example, or party bulletins, or Bangla little magazines? What about that entire world of circulation of ideas, which may have later been institutionally recognized in syllabi, but would you ignore it in these decades when we talk about the history of this?
So yes, thank you very much. It's very, very good questions. First, answering the first question is that so the medium of instruction was Bengali right from 1950 for the matriculation exam and 40 onwards. So although the department at the area level in the 48 onwards was largely urban and coming from suburbs, but later on from the 50s suburbs who had rural and suburbs, but that's still less. Calcutta was still very much getting in that. Teachers profile, and good find in 1994 union made this, and from the teachers profile, both the visiting and the full life faculty, 48 to 94. It was very, very upper class for me. So, Ramon has the those were there, I absolutely talking to. I could find one Muslim teacher in the entire period, and it would be all disciplines. There was 2-3 persons studying where it could be from student class background, it would not, it cannot, because Rai and Mondol and all could be anyone, so I can't guess. Unless I go to the service records of that, which have to go or either to give the KPI, these are the shortcomings of the itself project. Because sometimes you won't get access to all these previous product files. And apart from only the political sciences and in 1960, Bela Dotto was a very, very much active person, and she quite supported the student movement regardless it was changed. But she didn't write much as we like to call something. So she was actually a very, very good teacher. It's a very student friendly. On the language part, yes, what was happening is some of the political scientists were writing Bengali texts, including theorists who write, and some kind of commentaries, or something like that, and later there was another textbook that we wrote. It's also true for some other faculty members, and it's also strategy also wrote something. So you have those things, but party classes and all, yes, I have to see that. Somewhere the Google dedicated a pamphlet on the national question, or on the Quit India movement. That is the Quit India movement. That was 1992, the Golden Jubilee year celebrated, but that's in English. I don't know whether they are very active in writing in Bangla. I have to check that, so I don't have the immediate answers to that. Modern period became a more practice for political science much later, so it's all words. Although a lot of things that were happening, the article was at Hospital and all they were kind of covering, including this syllabus change movement.
So this is two small questions. One is kind of related to the last one, which was question. So what was the publication world in which people were writing? So you mentioned books, but what kind of publishers were then there? And then if there were journal articles, then which kinds of journals were available? Did the department themselves have, their own journals which also became part of their, so basically it was a question of how a lot of this output sort of in a sense circulated. The other it's a question which I've been always curious about is why did JU have going for an IR department rather than political science? Because there must have been some thought process going into what is required in a given place, and so because what is that is it's a Calcutta University at that point when the partition happened and political science department was formed. Was it some thought was spring the same year, or was it so? Is that the sense?
What is the next one? One by one. We go one by one.
What other questions?
That's fine. We go one by one.
So the population world is it's interesting that in the 1930s and 40s you have Calcutta-based phrases which are actually global publishers. So the Lawrence Green, who was publishing gay American books from the 1926 onwards, in the reform scheme in 1935 and the other books in 40s. They were also simultaneously getting published in the UK and the US, even in Canada, Toronto, New York, Toronto. And those books were, if you search, you find those books where there are several libraries globally. They were from the 50s onwards, publication world changed because it's kind of deviating from the and the theorists was much more publishing local. Yes, and that happened later with the Afro-Asian the New Delhi or Calcutta-based places. The KP Mark, and then there are word trace, which is also connected with the nobody and that. But they so that was there. Who is connected, how it's connected. Those things were there. As far as journals, people were very much sure which journals to publish. So someone like Maidul and also was saying they were publishing part of their affairs on London. Then nationally, local journals like the Modern Review or the Cause or that those were they so someone like Gujarat Bhattacharya was starting Marxist journals very much. And radical humanists, those kind of journals that was published. Indian Journal of Political Science was the major professional journal that all of them were published. With all the anchors and all the names that have been written. At least one paper that they published in the early career or in the mid career, they published in the Indian Journal of Political Science. That was the standard journal for political science at that time. So this is the largest publication scene. What was the other question? I have no idea. Like, what was the reason for the other thing?
Why did Jaipur decide to inaugurate a Department of International Relations?
That was promoted by America.
CIA.
So that was another kind of I don't well, I don't know whether that was I believe also in theorists. Everything it just started by there and
Also, because see, international relations was by then in the US, you know, there were departments in the departments where there was none except for Sabru House. So it would then become the first department of JNU. So the Sabru House was a much older. And there was no international relations anywhere else. The other thing was the only department.
They actually said money.
No. Yes, no.
you see this is where I'm going to talk the other chapter. This is where I have to talk the other chapter with the JD not really coming up. Because the predecessor of JNU, the Sabru House, the School of International Studies, So you get, and you know, a lot of academic literature is that the decolonization period, but this period is essentially to promote the academic dominance and empiricism. And the international relations departments and then a lot of international relations become interested in area studies. So the area studies became a part, and the concern, the interest in area studies were very much there in Delhi and the Calcutta department also. And even in Dhaka, the sociology department and the basis of and all the aims and UNESCO protest and all have to go to the UNESCO documents. And some of the documents I have already gone to the disciplinary contributions that they are. In the 54 document of UNESCO, there is a particular disciplinary contribution. What is the UNESCO plan for promoting critical science in different disciplines in India? For statistics, for example, Normative actually edited that particular yearly conference in that. So I will hear that story, but because Calcutta is not a prime anchor in the project, but I will certainly talk about when I compare the daily zone and the international relations in this paper, because in the standard I will talk about per se concept.
By the way, not only international program, it's also important. It's also better by for. And this is hardly surprising because if you look at reconstruction Europe, all those departments were de-Christianized, as it were. But I mean, this is simply very well studied. You know, like what happened to history departments in class, what happened to departments in even England, although England was more resistant to it.
We are very interested. That's precisely why even the methodological approaches. Empirical political science comes much later. Somehow in 1990, where there are three years of the post-behavioural movement where the mix of qualitative and quantitative approaches. But England was great, and that's why you don't have political science department. You have political studies or politics or government. Because only the London School of Economics and political science. Otherwise, in most of Britain and most of Europe, you don't have political science. The political science part is coming from the empirical and pure political sciences that is not part of the American. And India, in that sense, I mean, it's interesting. India actually made the American academy's legacy. Right from 1920, so all the Department of Political Science. Some department you have department of politics and public administration, like in Pune or in Bombay also. In Department of Civic Science, you find LSC model because where the public administration is. And but it's interesting that in the Indian departments came out of like in Dhaka. I don't know about this part stuff, but it either came from history department or economics department. So Calcutta and Dhaka came from economics department, whereas Allahabad and Lucknow they came from the history department. So that's another kind of.
So I have two questions. So understanding you spoke about the internal evolution of the political science departments. But now I was wondering what kind of interactions did the political science department have with other departments, whether it be of literature or history or sociology, with those influence how the political science are thinking their in particulars. The second question was during this entire period, did the political science department ever try to develop a particular notion of politics inside us?
So, first question is a difficult question because I have to become a private investigator to know the informal discussions that the political scientists that I was discussing in the paper were having. The number of acknowledgements and prefaces that I have read, all those books that I have read and the papers that I have read in the last 5-6 years, mostly they were talking to fellow political scientists or the teachers of political science. someone of Pune's seeker, he was talking to statisticians at the most because he was roughly from 1960 or 1962 onwards. He was working on survey methods and particularly looking at voting behaviors of elections. So I'm not very clear. So I don't have a very definitive answer to that. What kind of influences of other disciplines or they were interacting? I think that's not very clear from the acknowledgement sections. It is possible that informally they could have done. My informal interview with Omar Bakshi, he said that when they were teachers at presidency, they were hardly talking to others. Political science was something, you know, this is a very low level. Because they don't know mathematics. So, but I was quite surprised to see. He said that he only had some interaction with Donald Cook, who is a liberal, but the others were really I have all the raw footages with me. So, but I was quite surprised that why they were not talking. But part of the reason was precisely that economics from the 1950s, 60s onwards became a very positivist science. Where political scientists in India remain very descriptive or legalistic. There's a brief moment of statistics when at some spark of ethics and political science, but then soon it got weaker. Even high-tech historians who feel their and they lobby with part of that they actually be a political science presidency to actually say that you come to our team of history. We political scientists still have a lot of languages there that I actually to the disciplines. So of course they immensely contributed to the growth of the voluminous scholarship of both history and political science. And really acknowledge several languages that they taught and prizes that they probably received later. Further declaring of prize ancient held and nature to go and other prizes that recently the green on the sand. So I think that's this is what I don't have enough proper answer. The second one, what is politics, is something which was there in the but I think the most serious answer to this question was actually the attempt was there on the center itself. Political science at the university didn't quite ask this fundamental question. But at the center, they were essentially trying to ask this question. And after the professional people are trying to study politics, but they actually questioned the positivist method and what is politics in that sense, the way fundamental. And whether they actually incorporate systematic theory. I think all of them show about the low part category, so initially they were trying to answer that question, but I don't find, at least among academic investment, they don't find to ask that question. So they were more interested in the existing scholarship that is given, so either they were kind of adding up to the existing scholarship, or just commenting on the everyday political life.
Thank you for the wonderful presentation, sir. My question is, I was reading the article yesterday in the Express. He argues that the political papers wither away the possibility. He argues that JP Narayan is on last page of this definition that Charles interpretation was the last interpretation of the Marx. And he tried to relate that to the present politics, that is null in the actual political part, rather than being only confined to the academia, is the resulted in the present crisis which we are facing in the Indian politics. So, how would you take that argument in terms of your research, particularly in the
in fact, he mentions Sheldon Pollock's
Head of Sanskrit,
Right, and so we are just asking calling them to say that just as we spoke of the death of Sanskrit followed it, so too there has been a death of people too. Yeah, I think that one of the things that.
Yeah, I actually agree with, partly agree with him, right? Partly, I mean, I totally agree because it seems that there is the lack of, I would say, the serious thinking in terms of in producing political thinker, how powerful political thinker, by a political thinker, by political actors. And I think, one thing was happening from the 70s onwards was that political science as a discipline and as a profession become more of a professional discipline. And from 80s onwards, it becomes more corporate. 90s onwards with the globalization and now more corporate. You have all these big boxes to become promoted in your career. So you publish so many books on foreign presses, so many journals in the foreign impact factor journals of that. Then you have all the systems of appreciation of promotion. So all those things happen there. And Stevens is onwards, so Jack and Narad, but his predecessors like Yonia and Narad, it's very interesting public intellectual, very profound public intellectual, and also opposed to the Nehruvian ideas. That didn't quite because the strategies of the so-called Narad movement, Nehru and Nitish and all, they were actually active politicians. They were not intellectual powerhouses. So that was one. Now the Gandhian tradition also, the Congress was never interested in promoting the Gandhi Seva or any kind of activism that could let's say, produce such a kind of political thing. I think the thesis of, if I have read him correctly, of the thesis is that political thinking and political tactics actually is you need to have a dual and a simultaneous set of practices. So political thinking as a practice, as well as political activism as an actual practice. That should culminate together in one personality, and that is something which is missing. And you will find that there is a lot of activism that happened on the environmental movement right from 1980s, and you have activists who might be very good thinkers, but they at the same time they didn't quite produce much to have that kind of overall scholarship. So given that I do professional life, that is professional career of information science and stuff like that. And that's precisely the problem. Yeah. And without, I think, without great political movements against government and corporations, I don't think that there could be a necessary condition from where political thinkers, political thinkers would emerge. So anti-colonial struggle was one particular phase where very few thinkers from different ideological persuasions that came out, and they were Roy and Goya, they came out, apart from the UN. But then, and then the next big movement was the anti-invertism. But what was interesting that from the anti-invertism movement, you have some interesting politicians that came up, but no big political thinker there. I don't to have a professionals who would comment on Indian political thought. It would be something who I on the some other studies like which came out after the 1980s, now in 1980s, but it was political thinker. So I agree with you.
I just one last question, sorry to be taking up time, but shouldn't you, if it's a history of a discipline worker, shouldn't you begin with Dhaka?
Yes, accountability there, but accountability there.
That's the first political science department, right?
No, hospital science department is Lucknow 2021.
Lucknow,
So in the book there will be one chapter which will talk about Lucknow and Allahabad, which is the early beginnings of political science. And then I came to Dhaka a little bit, and then when Banerjee and Ajit Kumar Sen moved to Calcutta, and then that's.
স্যার আমার প্রশ্ন হচ্ছে আপনি লক্ষ্য শুনলাম ভালো লাগলো ধন্যবাদ এরকম দেখছি এটা জানার জন্য যে সেই সময় যে সময় সিলেবাসের কথা বলছি এবং যে মতাদর্শ মার্ক্সবাদী মতাদর্শ কথা আমরা শুনলাম সেই সময় অনেক বেশি সাইলেন্ট একটা বিষয় যেটা দেখলাম যে এমন শ্রীনিবাসের বইয়ের কথা তো ইভেন শ্রীনিবাসের বই বা ইভেন শ্রীনিবাস সম্পর্কে সেই সময় চর্চা হয়েছে কিনা বা যদি সায়েন্স কেন সায়েন্স আর একটা বিষয় হলো যে সিটিজেনশিপের বিষয়টা PH মার্সেলের একটা বই সোশ্যাল ক্লাস এন্ড সিটিজেনশিপ যেটা 1949 সালে পাবলিশ হয়েছে 1949 তো এই সিটিজেনশিপ PH মার্সেল তো এই সিটিজেনশিপ আলোচনা কি সেই সময় যে সময়টা আপনি বলছেন সেই সময় সিলেবাসে অন্তর্ভুক্ত ছিল বা পড়ানো হয়েছিল যদি কেন সেটা সায়েন্স ছিল
কেন সায়েন্স ছিল সেটা তো বলতে হবে না, কিন্তু সিটিজেনশিপ দিয়ে তখন কোনো একটা আলোচনা হতো না। মানে একটা কারণ হলো যে 55 সিটিজেনশিপ অ্যাক্ট করা হয়, তাতে তো খুব বেশি সিটিজেনশিপ সমস্যা খুব একটা কিছু ছিল না। বেসিক্যালি চলেই আপনার বর্ন সিটিজেন অর রেসিডেন্স এটি হয়ে গেল। এগুলো পরে সমস্যা তৈরি হয় 2003 থেকে, তখন বাসরি গভর্নমেন্ট প্রথমে আসে এবং ওই 55 সিটিজেনশিপ অ্যাক্টটাকে চেঞ্জ করে অনেক রকমের, এবং পরবর্তীকালে তো এই 2019 সালে এখন হলো। তার আগে সিটিজেনশিপ সমস্যাটা 70 দশক থেকে আসাম এবং পরে তালিবানের একবার 1985 এ তার কিন্তু এই সমস্যা ছিল। ওগুলো রেস্ট অফ ইন্ডিয়াতে কিন্তু সেখানে করে বেশি সমস্যা ছিল না। সিটিজেনশিপটা অতটা খুব একটা পলিটিক্যাল সায়েন্সে মাথা খাওয়া অস্ট্রেলিয়া সেটা ফান্ডামেন্টাল রাইটস একটা বড় বিষয় ছিল, এবং কোর্টের যে অধিকার, সুপ্রিম কোর্ট তার অধিকার আছে, লেজিসলেচার এক্সিকিউটিভ যে পাওয়ার ফাংশন সেগুলো কি হবে একটা ভালো আলোচনা ছিল। এবং ডেমোক্রেটিক ক্ষেত্রে আমি বলছিলাম 66 সালেও এই যে একটা শুধু একটা যে সুপ্রিম কোর্টের উত্তরপ্রদেশের লেজিসলেচারের সাথে সুপ্রিম কোর্টের কি সম্পর্ক এবং এই একটা মাত্র বিষয় নিয়ে উনি একটা বই লিখে ফেলেছেন। শুধু তারা এই ফান্ডামেন্টাল রাইটস এর সবগুলো নিয়ে লিখতেন। এমনি আইডিয়া যদি দেখা যায় যে এই ডেভেলপমেন্টের ওপরে তার স্কলারশিপকে অ্যাকনলেজ করতেন, কিন্তু এই কনস্টিটিউশনালটা দিয়ে বেশি ফান্ডামেন্টাল রাইটস এবং কনস্টিটিউশনের অন্যান্য যে গুরুত্বপূর্ণ বিষয়গুলো আছে সেগুলো বেশি ক্রিয়াকলাপ বেশি আলোচনা করছে। কিন্তু সিটিজেনশিপ নিয়ে তেমন কিছু আলোচনা হয়। শ্রীনিবাসনটা নিয়ে পলিটিক্যাল সায়েন্সের খুব একটা বেশি আলোচনা কখনোই করবো না। সোশিওলজিতেও অনেক কিছু হয়েছে কিছুটা, কিন্তু এর মধ্যে পলিটিক্স ও নলেজ থাকে, অনেক রকম বিষয় থাকে। কেন সায়েন্স ছিল এগুলো কি আমার কাছে জানা, কিন্তু পলিটিক্স এর মধ্যে ইতিহাসের একটা ফ্যাক্ট আছে যে বড়।
Thank you for the lecture. So my question is that it's a very broad question. So in 1947, after partition, so we see a huge migration from of the Muslim intelligentsia for this to Calcutta to East Pakistan or West Pakistan. So did that have any effect on the kind of because it had probably an effect on the scholarly community of the city, so that it have an effect on the political science communities.
মুসলিম ইন্টেলিজেন্সিয়া এটা মানে পূর্ব পাকিস্তানে যেটা গেছে সেটা খুব একটা বড় কোম্পানি টার্মস অফ নাম্বার সংখ্যাটা খুবই কম। মানে পলিটিক্যাল সায়েন্টিস্টের মধ্যে sorry, so in the Muslim intelligentsia that we're talking about during that period, even if we think about from 47 to 64 or maybe till 71, the number who migrated to East Pakistan or data market is so small. I don't know about any political scientist, mostly political scientists who actually migrated there because I didn't get hold of anyone. The mostly middle class, whatever middle school was largely was in the bureaucracy and lawyers were there at some stuff. I didn't find political scientists, social scientists, or political scientists. You know, historians, but they have models and all they were here in residency. Who is well? I can use the faculty department and I saw all the head of the departments in the faculty members. Top 50 members. And all well, they locals, they were not. Maybe they have one generation who came, but mostly they were all born and brought up in the districts of Bangladesh.
Any other questions? Q&A was as intense as your presentation. Thank you very much once again. Thank you very much for your presentation, participation, and yeah. So.
Next, who's